As dusk descends swiftly upon the western Visayas, it's as though an unseen hand snuffs out the horizon with the swiftness of extinguishing an oil lamp. A profound quiet settles over the landscape, enveloping the ponds in stillness as the jungle exhales a solitary, protracted breath. Dogs, once boisterous, now whimper softly, their tails tucked between their legs. Roosters, usually symbols of morning courage, seem to have forgotten their bravado, their proud crows silenced by an encroaching dread. Even the crickets, those tireless chirpers of the night, momentarily cease their symphony, pausing as if listening intently to some unheard sound. In that sudden, unnerving quiet, every villager is reminded of the age-old reason why windows are meticulously nailed shut at dusk, and why strings of garlic, pungent and protective, are hung beside crucifixes, their shadows dancing in the dim light. There is something out there, a presence that thrives on secrecy and darkness, a being they call Aswang. Though the name itself morphs and changes from island to island, whispered in hushed tones, it is simultaneously woman and bird, neighbor and nightmare, living flesh and a ravenous, insatiable shadow. By day, it might be seen buying rice at the market, haggling over prices with a disarming smile, inquiring after your children with feigned concern. But by night, it sheds its borrowed smile like a snake shedding its skin, revealing its true form. Bones crack and splinter as wings sprout grotesquely from its back, and it takes to the skies, drifting silently over rooftops, relentlessly searching for the warmth of blood, the rhythm of beating hearts, the fragile spark of unborn lives. Some villagers swear with wide eyes and trembling voices that the Aswang can stretch its tongue, thin as a fishing line, through the tiniest cracks of a bamboo wall. With horrifying precision, it can drink the very soul from a sleeping infant, leaving only an empty husk behind, all without so much as stirring the mother's slumber. Others insist that it lands on iron sheeting with a lightness that defies belief, the only warning a faint tick, tick, sound that grows softer, more insidious, as the danger draws closer. The true terror lies not only in what the Aswang does, but in what it proves. Evil doesn't always howl in the depths of distant, untamed forests. Sometimes it sits beside you at a fiesta, complimenting your cooking with a honeyed voice, its eyes betraying nothing. It moves through gossip, a venomous rumor taking flight instead of leaving telltale tracks. It spreads suspicion like a disease, taking the place of tangible footprints. It twists trust, the very foundation of village life, into the sharpest, most agonizing weapon. For how do you defend yourself against a monster that greets you by name, that smiles with your neighbor's face? This is the reason the legend endures, woven into the fabric of Filipino culture like a dark thread. The Aswang reflects every hidden worry, every unspoken fear in the archipelago. The fear of losing a child to sickness or worse, the fear of betrayal by one's own kin, the gnawing fear that a smile so easily offered can mask the most insidious of lies. One creature carries them all, cloaked in feathered wings and the oppressive silence of the night. Tonight we embark on a journey to chase that very silence, across centuries of conquest, devastating plagues, and relentless survival. We will delve into the origins of this terrifying figure and discover how a shapeshifter, a creature of nightmare, became the most feared figure in Philippine collective memory. The hunt begins here in the breathless dark, where even the wind seems to hold its breath, listening for the telltale beat of wings. Long before European cartographers stitched these scattered islands into a single colony, the archipelago resonated with a symphony of diverse tongues. Within those languages lived whispers, ancient and chilling, of a shapeshifter that preyed on the vulnerable margins of village life. Linguists and historians endlessly debate the true etymological root of the word aswang, tracing its origins through a tangled web of languages and beliefs. Some scholars believe it stems from Visayan terms meaning one who eats like a dog, a stark image evoking a creature crouched low, devouring raw flesh with unrestrained animalistic hunger. Others see echoes of the Sanskrit word ashura, a demon that rebels against the divine order, a connection suggesting that ancient maritime trade carried more than just pottery and spices across the vast, restless waves. It also carried ideas, fears, and the seeds of shared nightmares. In Bicolano folklore, an ancestral trickster named Aswang steals fire from a benevolent deity, forever branding the name onto a cosmic thief whose insatiable hunger reshapes the very world. However it began, by the 16th century, Spanish missionaries were already documenting a terror that was deeply ingrained in the local psyche. Father Juan de Plasencia, a keen observer of local customs and beliefs, noted the Aswang among the Visayans, describing them as night demons that devoured the hearts of their victims while they slept, leaving behind only lifeless husks. Another friar wrote of grotesque birds that guided these malevolent beings to houses where pregnant women lay vulnerable, their unborn children ripe for the taking. The chronicles painted a portrait of a monster that was already many things at once: sorcerer, ghoul, midwife-turned-predator, its form shifting and fluid, bound not by a single appearance but by a shared insatiable appetite. Pre-colonial life in the islands was inextricably intertwined with unseen forces, with a deep reverence for the supernatural. Forests were believed to house the spirits of ancestors, their presence felt in the rustling leaves and the dappled sunlight. Rivers swirled with the energy of water deities, both benevolent and capricious, their moods influencing the tides and the bounty of the fishing nets. Illness was often interpreted as a sign of discord, a quarrel with the supernatural realm that required appeasement and reconciliation. Such a cosmos, the Aswang functioned less as an alien invader, an outsider from a distant realm, and more as a dark reflection, a shadow sibling to humanity. It offered an explanation for the inexplicable, why a seemingly healthy child might suddenly weaken and fade overnight, or why a corpse might look mysteriously drained when mourners lifted the burial mat, their faces etched with confusion and grief. The Babaylan, priestesses and healers, served as mediators between the human and spirit worlds, offering chants and salves, performing ancient rituals to keep the nocturnal eater at bay, to protect their communities from its insatiable hunger. The arrival of the cross, the imposition of a new faith, did not erase the Aswang, it merely rebranded it, forcing it to adapt and evolve. Spanish friars, armed with the doctrines of Christianity, folded the local demons into the moral ledger of Christian theology, assigning them a place within their understanding of good and evil. The Aswang became proof of the devil's roaming influence, a tangible manifestation of the forces of darkness at work in the world. It became a cautionary emblem summoned in fire and brimstone sermons that warned converts to renounce pagan rites and embrace the one true God. Yet despite these efforts, the legend proved remarkably resilient, stubbornly refusing to be extinguished. Strings of garlic, once hung beside Anito carvings, sacred objects representing ancestral spirits, now shared space with wooden crucifixes, symbols of Christian salvation. Coconut oil, once mixed with forest leaves for potent healing rituals, was now blessed with holy water, serving the same warding role. Elder shamans, once revered for their deep knowledge of forest herbs and ancient rituals, continued to practice their craft in secret, whispering incantations under the cover of darkness. Through every translation, every adaptation, animist, Catholic, cinematic, one essential element remained constant: the creature blurred categories defying easy definition, was simultaneously spirit and flesh, neighbor and beast, curse and comfort, existing in the liminal spaces between worlds. Each time the culture shifted, each time a new power asserted its dominance, the Aswang adjusted its mask, ensuring that every generation inherited a monster tailored to its own specific fears, a reflection of their deepest anxieties. That is why the word persists, echoing through the centuries. It is both fossil and seed, carrying within it the echoes of dog teeth snapping bone, of Sanskrit gods locked in cosmic rebellion, of colonial sermons dripping with sulfur and the promise of redemption. Say the name aloud anywhere in the Philippines, and someone will inevitably have a story, a caution, a memory to share, their voices hushed with a mixture of fear and fascination. The etymology is still unfolding, constantly being rewritten each night in the hushed silence between a mother's whispered prayer and a distant tick that might be only a bird or the first syllable of something hungry. Across more than 7,000 islands, each with its unique culture and landscape, the Aswang has never worn a single mask, never settled into a single form. Instead, it fragments into a multitude of regional types, each molded by the local terrain and the specific fears that haunt the communities. Listing them is like reading a macabre catalog of shadows, each entry answering a different question about what keeps a village awake at night, what horrors lurk just beyond the edge of the firelight. Manananggal, the self-segmenting seeker of viscera. Picture a quiet barrio at the stroke of midnight. The moon casts an ethereal glow, staining the thatched roof silver. Somewhere in the distance, a dog whimpers softly, its tail tucked between its legs as it crawls under the stairs, seeking refuge from an unseen threat. A humble hut, a pregnant woman stirs in her sleep, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly, then drifts off again. Above her, silhouetted against the moonlight, a grotesque form hovers, half human and half night creature. The upper torso of the Manananggal has torn itself free from the waist, the raw edges dripping black, aka, a viscous fluid, onto the thatch roof below. Bat wings rustle softly, their leathery membranes catching the faint light, and a tubular tongue, long and prehensile, snakes through a bamboo slat seeking the warmth of the unborn child within. In the grove nearby, her discarded lower half stands upright, eerily still like an abandoned scarecrow left to rot in the field. Villagers, well-versed in the creature's weaknesses, spread salt and ash across those severed hips, hoping to prevent the two halves from rejoining, for if dawn rises before she reattaches them, the creature will burn where it stands, consumed by the purifying light of the sun. The story of the Manananggal is a chilling manifesto of maternal dread, a reflection of the anxiety surrounding childbirth and the vulnerability of pregnant women. It explains miscarriages, breech births, and the pervasive terror that something unseen, something malevolent might steal a child before its first dawn. Tik-tik walk walk. The night raptors on the window pane, a different melody advertises danger, a harbinger of impending doom. Tick-tick-tick. The louder the chirp, the farther away the hunter, giving a momentary respite, a false sense of security. The softer the note, the nearer the talons, the closer the creature is to claiming its prey. Some say the sound emanates from a bird, a grotesque avian familiar that guides the Aswang to vulnerable prey, leading it through the darkness like a beacon of death. Others insist that the monster itself produces the noise, a form of sonic deception designed to confuse and disorient its victims, lulling them into a false sense of security before striking. Either way, villagers steeped in superstition and fear nail stingray tails above door frames, believing that the serrated spines will slash the belly of the predator, preventing it from entering. Fathers keep watch with bolos, their traditional knives, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement, while children count the seconds between each tick, their hearts pounding in their chests, hoping against hope that the next interval grows longer. When the sound finally stops, an oppressive silence descends, pressing against the walls like a held breath, amplifying every creak and groan of the house. Only when the roosters crow, heralding the arrival of dawn, do families unclench their prayers, their bodies finally relaxing after a night of agonizing tension. Sigbin, the backward walker, travels south to Bohol and witness a creature that moves like a broken shadow, a distorted reflection of reality. The Sigbin is said to emerge during the hottest weeks of Lent, when the soil cracks under the scorching sun and crops beg for rain, a time of hardship and vulnerability. It walks backward, its head lowered between its hind legs, long ears flapping against its gaunt, emaciated body, an unnatural gait that inspires both fear and revulsion. Some stories give it goat-like features, cloven hooves and a scraggly beard, while others grant it fangs the length of sewing needles, sharp and menacing. What all tales share is the Sigbin's insatiable hunger for children, a hunger that goes beyond mere sustenance. Elders claim that it drains them not of blood, but of luck, of the very essence of their potential. A house visited by a Sigbin might find every venture failing for a year, businesses collapsing, crops withering, and relationships dissolving. Superstition or not, families still chalk white crosses on doorsteps at the start of Holy Week, a desperate attempt to keep the backward walker from crossing the threshold, to protect their homes and their children from its malevolent influence. The grave-robbing ghoul. In coastal towns, where typhoons churn cemeteries into muddy chaos, dislodging coffins and scattering bones, the Aswang takes on the form of a corpse thief preying on the newly deceased, lurks outside wakes, patiently waiting while relatives play card games, trying to keep mourners alert to stave off the grief and exhaustion that threaten to overwhelm them. If the watchers grow drowsy, if their vigilance falters, The ghoul steals the body, replacing it with a banana trunk shaped in a crude human outline, and disappears before anyone notices the switch. Come morning, the coffin feels heavier, saturated with water-soaked wood, and the grief multiplies, transforming into something darker, something more profound, because something worse than death has happened. The deceased has been defiled, their final resting place desecrated. To prevent this desecration, families strike bamboo poles against the floor all night, creating a rhythmic thud that echoes through the house, believing that the constant noise will keep the ghoul at bay, disrupting its macabre work. The witch at the edge of town. Finally, there is the human-looking Aswang, often a solitary older woman who lives on the periphery of the village, selling herbal cures yet never joining in the communal celebrations, never fully integrating into the social fabric. Children say her eyes reflect images upside down, a subtle sign of her distorted nature. Adults gossip that she cooks meals with no smoke rising from her stove, a violation of the natural order that inspires suspicion. When livestock fall ill, it is her gate that receives secret offerings left anonymously in the dead of night, in hopes that she will lift the curse, that she will spare their families from further misfortune. Whether she is healer or hazard, a benevolent force or a malevolent one depends entirely on who is telling the story, their own fears and prejudices coloring their perception. In any case, she embodies the suspicion of the outsider who is also a neighbor, the unsettling paradox that defines the entire legend of the Aswang. Taken together, these diverse faces reveal a cultural portrait, a complex tapestry woven from fear, superstition, and the harsh realities of life in the islands. Each variant is a narrative tool shaped by ecology, medicine, and moral code reflecting the specific anxieties of the community. In coconut country, where night-flying fruit bats wheel through the sky like shadows, the Manananggal grows wings mimicking their flight. In drought regions where heat distorts the horizon and creates shimmering mirages, the Sigbin stalks backward through the wavering air, a creature born of desperation and hardship. Where mortality in childbirth runs high, a viscera thief punishes careless midwives, holding them accountable for their failures. The Aswang is a map of anxieties painted onto the geography of the islands, a folk survey more accurate and revealing than any colonial census, capturing the unspoken fears and beliefs of the people. When Spanish ships anchored in Cebu in 1565, they carried muskets, crucifixes, and doctrines, all instruments of power, ready to classify every native practice as either devotion or heresy, forcing the complex and nuanced beliefs of the Filipinos into a simplistic binary. Facing this rigid categorization, the multifaceted Aswang quickly slid into the category of devil servant, a creature to be feared and eradicated. Friars, hearing villagers speak of Babylon healers and shape-shifting predators, wrote detailed reports to Manila authorities, documenting their encounters with the supernatural. They described sorceresses with wings, beasts that drank the blood of Christian infants, and omens that lured men from the true faith, all evidence of Satan's insidious influence. These accounts were not mere objective observations. They shaped colonial policy, justifying the suppression of indigenous beliefs and the imposition of Spanish rule. If the Aswang was proof of Satan's grip on the islands, then baptism became an act of spiritual warfare, a way to liberate souls from the clutches of darkness, and resisting taxation could be painted as complicity with the forces of evil. The transformation was mutual. In sermons, the Aswang lost its earlier nuance as a spirit of hunger or illness and gained the singular, demonized identity of an agent of the devil, a constant threat to the souls of the faithful. Friars ordered villagers to burn anito statues, symbols of their ancestral heritage, yet allowed them to keep garlic charms, as long as these were blessed with holy water, incorporating elements of the old beliefs into the new religious framework. Coconut oil, once mixed with forest leaves for healing, became Santa oil when stirred under a carved image of Mary, blending indigenous practices with Christian iconography. Protective chants shifted language from ancient syllables to Latin phrases, the rhythm and intent remaining intact, but the words transforming to reflect the new dominant culture. The legend adapted by layering new symbols over old fears, the way a mangrove root wraps itself around a colonial cannon abandoned on the shore, a testament to the enduring power of the past. Meanwhile, colonial authorities discovered a practical use for folklore, weaponizing fear to maintain control. In mountain zones, where rebels gathered to resist Spanish rule. Rumors of Aswang lairs discouraged civilians from offering refuge, isolating the insurgents and cutting off their support network. Spanish soldiers sometimes left animal carcasses near suspected insurgent camps, knowing that the gore would be read as evidence of a monster's feast, further terrorizing the local population. They patrolled the forest more effectively than scattered infantry, instilling obedience through superstition. The gender of the monster also sharpened under Catholic eyes, reflecting the patriarchal values of the colonizers. Babaylan, priestesses who commanded respect in pre-colonial societies, guiding rituals and midwifery, posed a direct threat to the missionary mindset, their spiritual authority undermining the power of the male-dominated clergy. So doctrines recast her as a witch, a figure of suspicion and danger. A healer aiding childbirth at midnight could now be accused of inviting the Manananggal, endangering the lives of both mother and child. Midwife who understood herb-based contraception risked charges of fetal sorcery, accused of interfering with God's will. The result was not only theological, it altered community power structures, sidelining female authority in favor of male-dominated sacraments, reinforcing the patriarchal norms of the colonizers. Even as the church tried to fix the Aswang into a single moral category to define it solely as a force of evil, local practice stubbornly refused rigid boundaries, blurring the lines between faith and superstition. Villagers who hung rosaries beside chili garlands, seeking both spiritual protection and physical well-being, did not see contradiction in their actions. They saw insurance, a pragmatic approach to a dangerous world. If one symbol failed, perhaps the other would hold, offering a layered defense against the forces of darkness. Spanish frustration grew as converts attended Mass by day, professing their allegiance to Christianity, then consulted herbalists by night, seeking traditional remedies for their ailments. One friar lamented that Filipinos feared the Tik-tik more than the fires of hell, a testament to the enduring power of the old beliefs. In truth, they feared both, but they trusted the Tik-tik to arrive first, to provide a tangible warning of impending danger. After Spain ceded the islands to the United States in 1898, a new colonial power asserted its dominance, and the monster once again shifted vocabulary, adapting to the changing cultural landscape. American teachers framed the Aswang as a quaint superstition, a relic of a bygone era, while simultaneously using it as a tool of education, telling children that science could banish the darkness, that reason could overcome fear. Yet in remote barrios where electricity lagged behind, the Aswang flourished in kerosene-lit evenings, whispered in hushed tones around the flickering flame. It began to appear in serialized newspaper tales and early silent films, now cast not solely as a moral lesson but as thrilling spectacle, a source of both fear and entertainment. Urban audiences gasped, captivated by the exotic horror, while rural viewers nodded, recognizing the flutter of wings outside their own thatch walls, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and familiarity. By the time the Philippines declared independence, finally shaking off the shackles of colonialism, the Aswang had survived 3 colonial regimes, each of which had tried to domesticate it, weaponize it, or banish it altogether. In response, the legend had accumulated layers like volcanic soil, building new landmass, constantly evolving and adapting. Garlic hung beside crucifixes, a syncretic blend of old and new. Latin incantations wrapped around Visayan melodies, weaving together different cultural traditions. Newspaper fiction fed by centuries of testimony, blurring the lines between reality and imagination. The creature walked out of the jungle wearing clerical shadows and Hollywood makeup, a hybrid of tradition and modernity. Yet its heartbeat was still the ancient Tik-tik, drifting softer with every step toward the unsuspecting home, a constant reminder of the ever-present danger. Music. Count how many Aswang stories begin with a woman living just beyond the village footpath, on the very edge of society. She is widowed or childless or simply too independent for comfort, defying the expectations placed upon women in a patriarchal society. She gathers medicinal plants at dusk, venturing into the forest when others fear to tread, and declines invitations to fiestas, preferring her own company to the boisterous gatherings of the community. In a culture where community is lifeline, where social bonds are essential for survival, that little distance invites speculation, fueling rumors that quickly bloom into fear, transforming her into an object of suspicion. Spanish missionaries added fresh timber to that suspicion, reinforcing the patriarchal biases that already existed. Pre-colonial Babylon priestesses commanded spiritual respect, guiding harvest rituals and birthing rites, holding positions of power and influence within their communities. Friars who preached one god and one male priesthood could not abide women mediating the sacred, their authority challenging the established order. Sermons recast these healers as devourers, twisting their knowledge and skills into something sinister. The Babylon became the Manananggal in clerical imagination, a cautionary emblem of female autonomy twisted into perversion within village gossip, demonizing female independence. The transformation was even more direct, more personal. Midwife grew old without children of her own and was soon suspected of stealing the unborn from others, projecting the community's anxieties onto her. A widow refused remarriage, choosing to remain independent, and was rumored to exchange the warmth of a marital bed for the cold feast of grave soil, defying social norms and inspiring fear. The monster filled a paradoxical role, simultaneously punishing women for stepping outside prescribed roles, for challenging the established order, yet granting them a dark kind of power, an agency born of fear. People feared the old herbalist, ostracizing her for her strangeness, but they also slipped offerings onto her porch when livestock fell ill, hoping she would intercede with whatever forces she served, acknowledging her power even as they feared it. Pregnancy sits at the molten core of the legend, fueling its enduring power. The Manananggal specifically targets fetuses, seeking to destroy new life before it has a chance to flourish. The Tik-tik signals its approach with each beat of a hollow tongue, relentlessly searching for amniotic bounty, the life-giving fluid that sustains the unborn child. These images map cultural anxiety onto the female body, portraying the womb and hunger as two sides of the same frontier, a source of both creation and destruction. In a land, the folklore summoned others, whatever feminist queer are, yet in many barrios in the remote corners of the Philippines, the older reading endures, the traditional interpretations continuing to shape perceptions. An elderly woman living alone still wakes to find salt scattered across her doorstep, a silent accusation baked into each grain, a lingering suspicion that refuses to fade. The gendered monster survives because it embodies conflict that remains unresolved, a persistent tension within Filipino society. Society reveres motherhood, celebrating the nurturing role of women, yet fears the power inherent in those who guide birth and heal the sick, mistrusting their knowledge and autonomy. It celebrates female devotion, praising women who conform to traditional roles, yet mistrusts female independence, viewing it as a threat to the established order. The Aswang hovers at that crossroads, wings extended, waiting for the next whisper to carry it from one generation to the next, its power fueled by the unresolved anxieties and fears of the community. Imagine a village fiesta at noon, the sun beating down on the festivities. Tables sag under platters of pancit, noodles stir-fried with vegetables and meat, and roasted lechon, a whole pig cooked to crispy perfection. Neighbors laugh, exchange gossip, sharing stories and jokes, and clink glasses of coconut wine, celebrating the harvest and the bonds that tie them together. Among them stands a quiet newcomer, a stranger who arrived only last planting season, his origins unknown. He smiles politely, engaging in small talk, eats sparingly, careful not to draw attention to himself, and leaves before the first round of karaoke, slipping away unnoticed. No one remarks on his early departure, dismissing it as simple shyness until chickens start disappearing from their coops, snatched in the dead of night, and a child falls ill with a fever no healer can name, their body racked with chills. Then memories sharpen into suspicions, the seeds of doubt beginning to sprout. He kept to himself, they recall, rarely interacting with others. He never joined evening prayers, a sign of his lack of piety. Someone recalls that a stray dog whined at his doorstep 2 nights in a row, an omen of bad luck. Soon, salt lines appear around his small bamboo hut, drawn by unseen hands in the dark, a desperate attempt to ward off the evil that is suspected to reside within. The Aswang myth thrives on this delicate edge between trust and doubt, this constant tension between the need for community and the fear of betrayal. Rural life demands cooperation, requiring individuals to work together to survive, yet fear of betrayal lingers like the taste of garlic on morning breath, a constant reminder of the potential for danger. The creature embodies that fear perfectly because it does not arrive from distant forests, a threat from beyond the village borders. It grows behind familiar faces lurking within the community itself, making it all the more terrifying. By day, it farms rice, tending to the fields alongside its neighbors, sings in the church choir, praising God with the rest of the congregation, lends a bolo to a neighbor, offering assistance without hesitation. By night, it might crouch on the roof, a monstrous figure silhouetted against the moon, its tongue trailing through the rafters toward a vulnerable sleeper seeking to drain their life force. Anthropologists describe this dynamic as scapegoating by proximity, a phenomenon where blame is assigned to those closest to the group when misfortune strikes. When harvests fail, leaving families hungry and desperate, or disease spreads, decimating the population, the community seeks the cause within its own ranks, rather than in unseen microbes or economic forces, seeking a tangible explanation for their suffering. Accusing an outsider would be easier, avoiding the discomfort of looking inward. Yet the legend insists that danger hides precisely where love feels safest, within the bonds of family and community, making it all the more insidious. The concept keeps villagers alert, fostering a constant state of vigilance, but it also sows seeds of isolation, eroding the trust that is essential for community cohesion. A single rumor, whispered in hushed tones, can exile a family more effectively than any government order, turning them into pariahs within their own community. History offers chilling examples, grim reminders of the destructive power of fear and superstition. Newspaper archives from the early 20th century document cases in which suspected Aswang were beaten or burned after a series of unexplained deaths, victims of mob violence fueled by fear and ignorance. Juana, during the 1950s, fathers patrolled rooftops after a rumor that a Tik-tik had alighted on a schoolhouse, spreading terror throughout the community. The alleged shapeshifter, a shy seamstress who kept to herself, vanished overnight and was never seen again, a tragic victim of unfounded accusations. And today, in the age of science and reason, police blotters occasionally note assaults on elderly women accused of witchcraft when livestock die under mysterious circumstances, revealing the enduring power of the old beliefs. Communities also devise collective defenses that double as social glue, reinforcing community bonds while protecting themselves from perceived threats. Night patrols gather at corner sari-sari stores, small neighborhood shops, share instant coffee, and exchange the latest sightings, reinforcing a sense of shared responsibility. Family compounds hang noisy tin cans along fences to rattle at the slightest touch, providing an early warning of approaching danger. Garlic braids and crucifixes compete for space above doorframes, a syncretic architecture of fear and faith, blending traditional beliefs with Christian iconography. These rituals reinforce belonging, demonstrating loyalty to the community and its values. To participate is to declare solidarity, to affirm one's commitment to mutual safety. To abstain is to invite scrutiny, raising suspicions and potentially ostracizing oneself. Yet the Aswang can also foster compassion, offering a path to understanding and acceptance. In places where genetic disorders cause muscular contortions, conditions that were once shrouded in mystery and fear, families once ostracized have become the focus of medical outreach precisely because villagers feared their conditions signaled a curse, the manifestation of evil. Health workers educating communities about dystonia or epilepsy sometimes invoke the legend to explain symptoms, reframing terror into understanding, replacing fear with empathy. The monster next door can be a catalyst for empathy once unmasked as illness or hardship, transforming the object of fear into someone deserving of compassion. The motif resonates beyond the Philippines, too, its echoes found in folklore around the world. Romania has its strigoi, the revenant who preys on relatives, a creature born of grief and betrayal. North America tells of werewolves who hunt their own kin, transforming into beasts under the light of the full moon. Each culture warns that the familiar can betray, that those closest to us can also be the source of our greatest fears. The Filipino version retains a uniquely intimate sting because island life compacts social space, creating a sense of interdependence until everyone is a neighbor, connected by invisible threads of kinship and obligation. Betrayal here is never abstract, a distant threat with no personal connection. It is always personal, a direct violation of the trust that binds the community together. The modern era, the monster next door has migrated to digital platforms, adapting to the changing landscape of communication and fear. Viral posts claim CCTV footage of a pale figure scaling a wall in Quezon City, a densely populated urban area, or audio recordings of a tik-tik echoing through Metro Manila suburbs, fueling anxieties in the digital age. Common threads split between mockery and anxious speculation, reflecting the complex relationship Filipinos have with their own folklore. Even in concrete jungles, where neon light floods alleys dispelling the darkness, people lock windows and check ceilings before sleep, their actions a testament to the enduring power of the legend. The urban Aswang trades bamboo roof for galvanized iron, adapting to its new environment, but the silence before its imagined arrival feels the same, oppressive and unsettling. Ultimately, the monster next door persists because it serves more than one purpose, fulfilling a variety of psychological and social needs. It cautions against complacency, warning the community to watch over the weak, to protect the vulnerable from harm. It offers a narrative outlet when misfortune strikes without visible cause, providing an explanation for the inexplicable. It also exposes fault lines of prejudice and fear, revealing which neighbors stand just inside the circle of trust and which hover at the margins, objects of suspicion and fear. In every barrio, every block of low-rent apartments, someone occupies that liminal zone, existing on the periphery of society. The legend waits in that space, ready to take shape the moment the first unexplained shadow crosses the threshold, the moment fear takes root in the community. Radio crackles to life in a bamboo kitchen, the sound filling the small space. A fisherman tunes past pop ballads, seeking something more authentic, until a late-night host begins sharing a caller's trembling account of wings on a tin roof in Iloilo, their voice shaking with fear. The broadcast is part talk show, part seance, blurring the lines between entertainment and the supernatural, and listeners lean closer to their transistors, captivated by the chilling tale. Decades earlier, tabletops held only kerosene lamps and folktales traded face to face, their power amplified by the darkness and the intimacy of the gathering. Now, electricity and airwaves carry the aswang into every household, spreading the fear and fascination to a wider audience. Yet, despite the changing modes of communication, the story refuses to drain of power, its impact undiminished by the passage of time. The first cinematic version arrived in 1959 with the film Ang Manananggal, bringing the legend to life on the big screen. Black and white frames showed a woman splitting at the waist and flying under a cardboard moon, a low-budget special effect that nonetheless captured the essence of the creature. Audiences shrieked, their screams echoing through the theaters, yet felt an uncanny familiarity, recognizing the monster from their childhood nightmares. They had heard the same tale by their grandmother's hearth, whispered in hushed tones on dark and stormy nights. Film studios noticed the box office draw, recognizing the commercial potential of the legend, and soon the creature stalked every genre, adapting to different styles and audiences. The 1970s, the comics industry turned the Aswang into a recurring villain in weekly comics, pitting them against local superheroes. Each panel married American superhero aesthetics with barrio nightmares, creating a unique blend of cultures. The shapeshifter wore bell-bottoms or flapper dresses, adapting to the changing fashions, but its long tongue never lost the taste for blood, a constant reminder of its monstrous nature. Television brought the legend into national primetime, reaching an even wider audience. Anthology shows like Shake, Rattle, and Roll introduced urban viewers to provincial dread, exposing them to the horrors that lurked in the rural areas. Episodes set in narrow Manila alleys suggested that iron gates and concrete walls offered no defense, that the aswang could penetrate even the most secure urban environments. City dwellers began adding garlic garlands to condo balconies, a curious mix of superstition and skyline living, blending traditional beliefs with modern urban life. Horror directors such as Eric Mati later splashed digital effects across the legend in Tik-tik, the Aswang Chronicles, creating visually stunning and terrifying depictions of the creature. Surreal landscapes and stylized gore turned the creature into both phantasm and pop icon, a symbol of Filipino horror. Critics saw camp spectacle, dismissing it as mere entertainment, Yet rural audiences still felt the old pulse of warning, recognizing the underlying themes of fear and vulnerability that resonated with their own experiences. The 1980s presented a grimmer stage for the Aswang myth, particularly under the shadow of martial law. Paramilitary units, masters of psychological manipulation, weaponized folklore. They deployed hidden loudspeakers amidst the dense coconut groves, broadcasting unsettling recordings. The frantic flapping of unseen wings, the chilling shrieks of unidentifiable animals, aimed directly at rebel encampments. The primal fear of an unseen predator lurking just beyond the tree line proved more effective than any propaganda leaflet, emptying huts with unnerving speed. In a particularly gruesome operation, soldiers drained the blood from a captured insurgent, leaving the exsanguinated corpse strategically placed along a known guerrilla trail. Rumors, carefully seeded, quickly blossomed into terrifying tales of an Aswang prowling the area, thirsty for blood. Fear gripped the rebel fighters. They avoided night patrols, and government forces seized strategic ground virtually unopposed, not firing a shot. The shapeshifter, a creature of myth, became a silent, unwitting collaborator in maintaining authoritarian control, a chilling testament to how effectively monsters, both real and imagined, can be drafted into the political arena. The diaspora carried these stories across oceans. Overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, in Dubai, separated from home and family, shared grainy phone videos of flickering shadows dancing on hostile ceilings, convinced they were witnessing something unnatural. Canadian night shift nurses working long hours in the sterile environments of hospitals traded hushed anecdotes about phantom bird cries echoing in the otherwise silent hospital parking lots, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. The Aswang, no longer confined to the Philippines, traveled inside the luggage of memory, hungry for new settings and new fears. When a TikTok clip boldly labeled as a real Manananggal sighting garnered over 2 million views, second-generation Filipino immigrants flooded the comments section, torn between disbelief and an undeniable ancestral awe. In the anonymous landscape of global cities, the Aswang transformed into a potent symbol of homesickness, a visceral reminder that homeland stories, deeply ingrained and powerful, still breathe and resonate even when passports and citizenships change. Contemporary artists and creators began to reclaim the myth, exploring it through new and provocative lenses. Queer performance artists staged elaborate drag shows, where the Manananggal's split body became a powerful metaphor for liberation from rigid binary identities, celebrating fluidity and self-expression. Feminist poets penned verses that reimagined the Aswang as a fiercely independent mother figure who rejects colonial expectations of chastity and domesticity, choosing instead the boundless freedom of the sky. Graphic novels such as Tracy brilliantly positioned Aswang clans as criminal syndicates operating within a vibrant urban fantasy setting, seamlessly blending folklore with sharp social commentary about corruption and power. Each reinvention threads modern anxieties and issues through the ancient beast, never severing the essential question that lies at the heart of the myth. What do we truly fear when we are no longer certain who stands beside us in the dark? Even tourism boards attempted to capitalize on the Aswang's enduring appeal. The city of Roxas once proposed a large-scale Aswang festival to boost the local economy, envisioning elaborate street parades, winged costumes, and themed attractions. However, strong opposition from local clergy swiftly halted the plan. They argued that such a celebration risked honoring and glorifying evil, potentially inviting negative spiritual forces into the community. The ensuing debate over the festival exposed a deep-seated tension. Is the Aswang a relic of outdated superstition that hinders progress and development, or is it a valuable cultural asset worthy of preservation and celebration? That very argument, the constant tug-of-war between tradition and modernity, keeps the legend perpetually relevant. Every refusal to celebrate, every expression of fear or skepticism, ironically serves as a reaffirmation that the monster still carries a potent spiritual voltage. Digital spaces have expanded the Aswang's terrain even further. Online message boards meticulously track reported sightings on interactive maps, transforming folklore into a form of crowdsourced detective work, with amateur sleuths analyzing grainy photos and comparing anecdotal accounts. Horror game developers design immersive levels where players must navigate treacherous bamboo villages while desperately evading night flyers, creating chilling virtual experiences. Podcasts dissect colonial history through the lens of the Aswang, drawing in global audiences eager to explore monster myths beyond the well-worn Western canon. Each new platform offers fertile ground, and the Aswang story sprouts with relentless adaptability. Common across these diverse modern expressions is the creature's function as a mirror, reflecting back societal stresses and anxieties. Rural depopulation, political violence, migrant displacement, and evolving gender norms each leave their indelible fingerprints on the myth's ever-changing skin. Yet the foundational attributes of the Aswang remain remarkably intact. It hides in plain sight, preys on the vulnerable, and relentlessly tests communal bonds. No amount of artificial through the in a world it fright instead a roost she cannot throughout it is it keep to un the monster it calls some list that as the but to not the or perhaps enlist when it does fear and